first thing we need to do is identify what are the possible concerns that they might have. And I mean every single one of them. Here's what I want to do. Here's where we are now. What are all the possible objections that they could have, regardless how ridiculous it might sound? Identify every single one of them and get help doing it, because you won't be able to figure out all of them, the craziest ones. You should get help. Find a lawyer and say, look, poke holes in this. Lawyers would love doing that anyway. Find a marketing friend. What are the possible things that could go wrong? What are the possible objections? Again, regardless of how remote. I want them to be personal, professional, emotional, marketplace, whatever they are. Find every possible thing that anyone could say against that answer, no matter how ridiculous. Identify them and list them all, because you are going to need to address every single one of those points. Because someone in that room, you get a room full of lawyers, a marketing committee, and you get enough people who are not comfortable with this, they're fine with where they are now, and you want them to do something that's pretty good, different, innovative, they're going to come up with all the different objections in that room. And as soon as one lawyer comes up with an objection, then it becomes a feeding frenzy. It's like, hey, yeah, I got a question too. Yeah, I don't like this. And they don't mean to be negative. It's just how they think, and they enjoy their conducting that analysis again, right? And so you've got to then identify every single one and have a logical, reasonable, and winning argument for every single one of those points. If you don't, you're going to lose. I win about 95% of the time now. The reason that I showed you all those creative things that we've done for hundreds of other firms is because they all started very conservative. They all started like, my firm's really difficult. Our lawyers are really tough. They say no to everything. It's like, I know. Every law firm does. Out of 200 times we've done this, maybe 5 times have they said, we've got a really creative firm, we want to really push the envelope. Those are great, but those are the exception. That lawyers generally start very conservative and risk averse, and to get them to do something really bold and creative, you've got to live in their world, and you've got to teach them to that point. Here's the answer. I need to teach them to that answer. So, not only do I need to know what the objections are, I need to know in what order they're likely to come up with those objections so that I can head those off. Because I know generally, if I think this through, right around here, they're going to start wondering about this. Or they're going to start wondering about conflicts about here. And because I'm talking about these things, then I start to hear that's going to make somebody in the room think, ooh, what about conflicts? So before we get to that point where they're worrying about that, just before that point, I've got to answer. Now, some of you are probably thinking about conflicts, and here's what. And so I control the room. I control the agenda. I control the flow of the conversation. I control the PowerPoint slides, and I control the evidence that I'm providing in the order that I'm providing it. So as long as I can anticipate where they're going to object and what they're going to be thinking, then I have to provide evidence to deflect them off of that before it even comes into their head and I start an argument, because I don't want an argument. I want a monologue where they at the end say yes, as opposed to, I don't want a debate, I don't want a discussion. You get a bunch of lawyers debating and I've lost. Because then you know the tangents that they can go off on. You can't let that happen. You've got to control the conversation. And you don't do that by doing what I used to do, which was, hey, here's something we should do, and here's why. By the time you tell them what you want to do, they're picking you apart already. And that was a problem that I had when I was in-house, is I gave them the chance to think of all the problems and then pile on. And at that point, I'm dead, because now I'm constantly defending myself against their onslaught. That was my mistake. I gave them the chance to do that. I created the fight that I was invariably going to lose. Now what I do is I teach them what I want them to do. We're going to have a conversation about logos. But I don't tell them anything about it until I've taught them what I need them to know. Then I show them that. I'll get to that later. But I've got to understand the flow of their logic, of the points that I need to make, and make sure that I answer all of those points with bullet points, data, examples, firms they know, firms they respect. If there's nothing in our industry, then somebody else's.